Hi everyone, so this is our final lesson before half term and a well-deserved break for all of us, I think. Hopefully the weather holds without getting too nasty, or maybe warm up, but if it warms up it normally rains. Never mind. Right, so we're going to be looking at volume of cylinders today, and a cylinder is a kind of prism. It's a prism where the cross-section that's always the same in the 3D shape is a circle, so like a tin of beans, something like that. So there are lots of problems to do with cylinders that we need to know about. Before we do that, I've got a little starter for you, which is one of the tougher number squares. So see how you get on with this. Okay, so here's our problem. It's a bit tougher than the ones we've looked at before. It's called harder. Sorry about the ink coming through from another puzzle. But so we're working from left to right and top to bottom. Nothing to do with BIDMAS here. And a lot of it is about thinking about times tables and what numbers could be possible. We've got 8 squares, and because 9's already been put in there, the numbers 1 to 8 are going into those. Immediately I notice that this is a -5, and I'm thinking, if I'm doing something divided by something, that's going to give me a number that's bigger than 1, because it can't be the same number divided by itself. And then I'm going to be taking something away that has got to be 5 bigger than whatever that result is there. So that's my one thing I'm thinking about. This has got to be, well, it can't be a 6, can it? So it's got to be a 7 or an 8 going there. So if 7 or 8 is definitely going there, I'm going to make a note of that. And then I've got a similar situation down here where, again, this number's got to be at least 2 more than that. So it's got to be a 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 there, hasn't it? And then because this number is going to be divided there and divided there, it's got to be a number that is divisible by 2 other numbers, and it's got to be a reasonably large number, I would think. So now I'm starting to think about this number, that it could be 8, because 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. It could be 6, because 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. And I don't think it could be anything else, because there aren't any other numbers that we can divide in 2 different ways. But also, we then get a number divided by something else at this point. And I'm thinking, I don't reckon I'm going to go with that one, because that's going to give me a 3 in one of them, and I'd have to then divide that by 3, which I can't do because I've already used my 3 for there. Now I can't do 8 divided by 4 is 2, because then I'd have to take 4 away. But so I'm going to do 8 divided by 4 is 2 this way, and then take 7 to get down to there. And if I divide by 2, I get 4. And then I take 6 away from 4 to get -2. Then I can divide 9 plus 4 is 13. So if I divide by 1, that stays where it is. 2 divided by 1 is 2. 2 plus 5 is 7. 7 5s are 35. Add 3 is 38. And we've got there. But I do admit I had to do a fair bit of thinking for that. And I did come away from that for a moment and paused it and went through and did a few bits. And I tried out 1 or 2 things, made a few mistakes. And you have to do that. You have to have a bit of resilience. And you have to think, if what I try first of all doesn't seem to be working, I've got to go through it again and then find out what I've missed. Right, so what we're going to look at here is the volume of the cylinder. We'll also do some stuff where we have to try and find out the surface area. What would the area of the net be? But right now, just the volume of the cylinder. Now, what's important is that the cross section is a circle. So we need to know, so the volume of any prism is the cross section multiplied by the depth. So in this case, it'll be the circle times the depth, or let's call it the height, as we've got the height there. So the area of a circle is pi r squared, so it'll be pi r squared times the height. So we know that the radius is 5. So in our calculators, we would, if it was in a calculator paper, do pi times 5 squared times 12, press equals, and that would be our answer. However, when it says in terms of pi, that means it's a bit nasty. It's in the non-calculator paper, but all they want you to do is work out this number and say it's going to be that times pi. So how do we do that? Well, 5 squared is 25, so I can write that again like that, and now I need to do 25 times 12. So 25 times 10, 25 times 2, add those together, 250, 25 times 2 is 50, add them together, gives you 300. So the volume is going to equal 300 times pi, which we just write as 300 pi, and if you put it on the dotted line bit at the bottom, you see it's got the centimetres cubed, the units written there for you. Right, now this one is very similar, but this time you can use a calculator. So I'd like you to pause the video and have a go at the same idea. Be careful about this dimension, there's something slightly different. So we want our volume of our cylinder to be pi r squared times the height. And what we've been given here is called the diameter. So the radius is going to be half the diameter, so 9/2. So our volume is going to be pi times 9/2 is 4.5, isn't it? 4.5 squared times the height, which is 11. So all you need to do is get the calculator out, press on, shift down to the bottom where that pi is, times 4.5 squared times 11 equals 891/4 pi. Press S to D and you get 699.7. Now I've written down 0.78. They've asked for 1 decimal place, so I've written down the first 2 decimal places on the display. I want to write 699.7, but that 8 means it's closer to 699.8 than 699.7, so we round it up. Now here's another very similar looking problem. Again, we're using calculator because it's saying to 1 decimal place and it's involving pi. But this time they want the surface area, so you need to think about the net. Now you've got to be careful with the net of a cylinder, because if you draw it wrong, it can look a bit rude, and we don't want that. So we want 2 circles either side of a rectangle. So the rectangle is this distance from here to here is the 10.5 centimeters of the height. We've then got this length here, which is the circumference of the circle. And we need another formula for the circumference of a circle is pi d, or pi times the diameter. We're told the radius, so the diameter will be 4 times 2 equals 8 centimeters. So the circumference is going to be pi times 8, which we could just call 8 times pi for now. So the rectangle's area is the length times the width, which is going to be, the length is 8 pi times 10.5. We pop that into the calculator, 8 shift pi times 10.5, we get 84 pi. So let's just keep it as that for now, because it's less writing than turning it into a decimal. And then we've got 2 circles, and the circles are the same size as each other. So we just need to work out 1 circle and double it. Now the area of a circle is pi r squared, and you need to know that. So circles equals pi r squared, which is, and then we're going to times it all by 2 because there are 2 circles. So let's write that down, equals pi times 4 squared times 2 equals. Put that into your calculator and shift pi times 4 squared plus, not plus 2, times 2 gives us 32 pi. So then to get the total surface area, we just need to add those together. So if I just press plus, it says answer on there, it just uses your last answer. 84 shift pi should tell me 116 pi, because 32 plus 84 is. And because we want it to one decimal place, I now hit S to D, and that turns it to 364.42. So again, I've written down 2 decimal places so I can then consider what 1 decimal place is. Because that's only a 2, we round down. That doesn't mean moving this number down, it's just because 364.4 is a bit smaller than 364.42. Moving on to question 4, very similar to the question we've just done, only there's something different. They've given us a diameter instead of a radius, so you're going to have to think about that. Pause the video and see what you can do. So hopefully you've got somewhere along this. I began by doing the net. I put in the dimensions, the width and that. So I know that the rectangle area is going to be 7 pi times 15, which is 135 pi. We're going to need to do this to 3 significant figures, so we will use our calculator, but we don't need to yet. Then 2 circles are going to be 2 times pi r squared, which is going to be 2 times pi times, now we need the radius. It's not enough to divide it by 2 afterwards, that will give us the wrong answer. 3.5 squared. Pop that into the calculator and we get 49/2 pi. I'm just going to write that down like that, because all I'm going to do now is add those together, plus 135 shift pi, and that gives me 319/2 pi, but I don't need to write it down like that. I'm going to press S to D. That gives me 501.0. Now I've written 4 significant figures. This is the first significant figure, and once that's there, all these others are significant. So even though you might have heard of zeros being not significant, in this case it is, because that's an 8, but that wouldn't round everything up, because if you imagine the number line, if you've got 501, below there you'd have 500, up here you'd have 502 as the next to 3 significant figures. 501.08 is going to be about there, still closer to 501. So that is our final answer, which we pop on the line there, and it's got our, what they're called, units in there for us. Yes. Now we're not going to go through all of these today. We will keep the second half of these worksheets back for our first lesson back over after half term, so that'll help remind it for us. So pause the video and give this one a go. So again, it's asking for surface area. This time it's not a very deep one at all, so it's much longer and thinner, the bit between there, with the circles being really quite large. So it's going to look something like that. This is your 7 meters, your 6 is from there to there, and I'm going to note 12 on from there to there, because for the circumference you need pi d, which is your 12, so that gives us 12 pi for that. So I can say my rectangle area is going to be 12 pi times 7, And this one wants it in terms of pi. So this is a non-calculator one, folks. 70 plus 14 is 84 pi. That's our rectangle. And then the area of a circle is pi r squared, and we want two of them. So two circles are going to be 2 times pi times the radius is 6 squared. Now 2 times, what's 6 squared? 36. So that's how many pi's we're going to have. Double 36 is 72. And then it's time for us to add all the pi's. 4 add 2 is 6. 7 add 8 is 15. So it's 156 pi. And if you look down here, there's a little gap there. And that's because there's one of the 4 marks is going to be for the units, because they're not given to us this time. So we've got that pi, but the pi is not the units, it's a number that you're timesing 156 by. The units are, what was this in? Meters. So that means it'll be meters squared, because it's area. 3D shape, but this is area. This is the amount of paper you'd need to wrap it, if you like. Here's the next one, very similar, but feel free to use a calculator for this one because they want it to 3 significant figures. So there's my net with the height in there, or the width of the rectangle, and the length of the rectangle is going to be the diameter, which is double the radius, which is given, that times pi. So 28 pi is that distance. So the area of the rectangle is going to be 28 pi times 25, whatever that is. Come back to that in a moment. And then we've got 2 circles. So 2 circles is going to be, area is pi r squared, circumference is pi diameter times diameter. It's going to be 2 times pi times the radius is 14 squared, and whatever that gives us. So let's pop all that into the calculator now. 28 shift pi times 25 equals 700 pi. 2 times shift pi times 14 squared is 392 pi. I can do that bit without a calculator, but why should I can just hit 700 pi in there. It gives me 1092 pi. Press S to D at this point. You've got 3 marks by then anyway. 3, 4, 3, 0. I've now got 4 significant figures already, and it's rounded itself already, hasn't it? Because we've only got 3 there. So it is 3,430, and the units are centimeters squared. And that's sort of where we're going to leave it for today. The next question is what we'll start off with after half term. But if you'd like to have a little look at it, and I'd like to upload evidence of what you've done so far to me, but I'll give it as an option. If you would like to upload a bit of question 7 and have a go at it before we do it, that would be great. So you've got to work out the volume of the semi-cylinder, which just means working out the volume of the whole cylinder, and then doing one simple thing. I'll let you think about that. And the other part is working out the total surface area. So for the surface area, this curved bit is going to be half the size of the curved bit you'd get normally. You're going to get 2 semicircles, which adds up to 1 circle. And then you're going to have this rectangle here, which is actually quite an easy one to work out. But I would consider drawing the net of that before you went any further. And that's what I'll be doing when I start going through it next time after the half term. But in the meantime, have a lovely, lovely half term, everyone. And I hope the weather stays nice for us. Okay, cheerio, everyone. Bye bye.